Welcome to the Money Mastermind Show. Let's talk money.
And welcome to the Money Mastermind Show. There are a lot of people out there trying to get your money. Yes, you have all the marketing and advertising, and they're all trying to get a piece of your pocket to buy their stuff. But outside of them, there are some people out there who are straight up trying to scam you and doing nefarious things to get your money. Joining us tonight is Mark Tan of Thrivent Financial, and he's going to help us navigate this scary minefield of financial scams waiting to blow you up. Welcome to our show, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here and helping us out with this topic. And now I want to also mention the members of the Money Mastermind Show. We have Kyle Prevost of youngandthrifty.ca, Miranda Marquette of Planting Money Seeds, Peter Anderson of Bible Money Matters, and Tom Drake of the Canadian Finance Blog. I'm Glenn Craig of Free From Broke. Before we start, I want everybody to know that if you are looking at our event page, there is a Q&A app there. So if you have any questions about financial scams, post them there, and we'd love to try to get to them and help you out with those. So Mark, am I correct to say that it's pretty common to come across some sort of financial scam and that these things aren't just targeted to a tiny few people?
I think that's a very fair statement. It's quite common. It's everywhere. Not just scams financially, but also just being able to access your computer. You'll get like an email from a friend that's their email account's been hijacked, and you'll click on the link, and it'll lead to accessing your email account. So there's a variety of things that are out there that people unfortunately may have clicked intentionally or unintentionally, but it's out there. You just have to be extra careful on what you see and what you click on. I mean, that's I think the most prudent thing you could do these days when you receive something from someone you haven't recognized, also from someone that you do recognize, because it all works both ways.
So you're saying a lot of these financial scams, they don't even start off as something that we would recognize as a financial scam, and maybe just something that seems familiar and then somehow builds into something where next thing you know, we're giving up our account number to somebody.
Exactly. Well, there are emails out there that would basically look like it's coming from your bank, like it could be from Citibank, Chase, or any of the other major banks, and they'll ask you to sign in. We've got some software upgrades, and for you to access it, we need you to, provide a username and password. Or, for example, they'll even have like a threatening message where if you don't access it now, you won't be able to access your account. And all it takes is they'll send it to many individuals. All it takes is a few, and it's worth the effort and time on the other end. For as long as they can get a few of those, for them it's worth it. And unfortunately, people do fall for emails or gimmicks like that.
And this technique, if I'm correct, this is what we call phishing, right?
Correct.
Correct. I mean, I guess it comes from them fishing for your information or throwing something out there, and then they bait you. If I've got it correct, maybe it's a little different. But I've seen these, exactly what you're talking about. I know I've gotten at least a few of them from PayPal, and it looks just like a PayPal email. And like you said, it'll say something along the lines of, we need to make sure your account stays active. Please click here to make sure. And then you log in, and next thing you know, you've just given your account info. And you don't even know that you've done that because everything pretty much looks normal otherwise. And it is pretty scary. So, I mean, something like that. Let's just start with that phishing. How do you recognize it, and how do you protect yourself from it?
I think first thing, just talking to people in the industry and friends and so forth that have been taken on these different scams is don't log into something where you've been sent an email or sent a message. If you think there's a legitimate reason for whatever email you've received, you manually go onto their website and log in for yourself, or even call customer service to make sure that there is a, I guess, truth to what you're being sent for that particular reason. So instead of them coming to you, go to that website. Say, for example, you have an account in Bank of America, and you get an email from Bank of America. They say, click on this link. Put your username and password. Don't do that. You go to the Bank of America website yourself, put in your information, and go that route. Much better than clicking on a link that you're sent from an email from this particular institution. So that's one thing, and just make sure that if you do get something like that, just be very careful. I mean, I don't know, everyone's got different software and so forth, different firewalls and security softwares, but the best thing is if you're not sure, just don't do it. Take your time. There's no rush. No matter how urgent the message may sound, there's probably a higher likely chance that it's a scam, because they give you that urgency, that sense that, okay, you need to take action now. So if you get something like that, there's a pretty high probability that it could be something that's really not legitimate.
So basically, any legitimate situation where they might need you to reactivate an account or just look at something that may seem fraudulent, like sometimes you might get an alert from a bank or a credit card, hey, I don't know if this is right, give us a call. Anything legitimate like that, you should be able to go to the actual site itself and find that information, or call up a customer service number that's on maybe your card or in your account. You don't have to do this through an email that they're sending.
Correct. That's the safest way to go. You take the action. You decide which site you go on. You're the one being proactive instead of you being led to, okay, take actions on their ground. So yeah, that's what you would do. You want to take it into your hands and take control of what site or what things you click on, instead of being baited into something that you probably shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, if you're a little more tech savvy too, it's as simple as just looking carefully at these emails that you're receiving. Almost every time you get one of these emails, there's going to be something that tips it off that it's not quite right. Look at the email address that it's coming from. A lot of the times the email it's coming from is not from the company. It's from some third-party email server somewhere.
From Bangladesh somewhere.
Exactly.
Right.
But you might not even see that in the email. The email might look like service at some other name.com, but not the actual company, or even the company name might be in there, but it won't look exactly like it should.
Right.
So that's just one thing you're going to be looking for too. You're also looking for strange use of language. If a lot of spelling errors or grammar mistakes in the email, that's a pretty big tip-off, because the cyber criminals aren't always as vigilant about their use of the English language, or maybe they're translating something in the Google Translator. So if something sounds like it's not quite right, that's probably a pretty good idea that something's going on. And a lot of times, these financial institutions and reputable companies are not going to ask for your social security numbers or account numbers over email or whatever. That's going to be probably a red flag right there as well.
And I found another way to kind of tip things off is if you're looking at the email itself, usually you can scroll over the link without clicking on it, and it'll show you what it is. And it's rare, and sometimes you have to check them all, but they won't go to the actual site. So if it's PayPal, it won't be PayPal.com. It'll be like something else that's just not even PayPal, and that's a pretty apparent red flag right there, even though everything else may look the same.
Right, and some of them are also using email shorteners now too, to kind of disguise it so that when you roll over, it looks, it goes to this email shortener, so that it disguises the fact that it's not going to the proper site. So I think that's something to think about too, is that you want to watch out for anything that looks shady, I guess.
Now, for the people out there that maybe aren't as tech savvy as we are, who have blogs and online businesses, by a URL shortener, what is that exactly, so that people know what to look for?
Oh, right, yeah. So it's just one of those things where it's like, rather than saying like www.plantingmoneyseeds.com, I might have I might plug it in, and it'll make a new address that's like bit.ly, something like that. So it's much shorter and prettier looking. And so if you see that they've been using shorteners, sometimes they do that to mask where it's really coming from. Like, we use shorteners because it makes it easier sometimes it makes it easier to track traffic and track to see where things are coming from, or because it just makes it easier to like put into Twitter and not go over your character limit. Mm-hmm. So we use it differently, but scammers are going to use it to hide what they're doing.
So Bitly's one. I think Google has a shortener also, and there's probably like a ton of other companies that
yeah.
Yeah, and listen, like if you're not that tech savvy and you're not sure about these things, for example, my mother-in-law clicks on every link in every email she's ever gotten. It just boggles my mind. For someone like that, they're better off probably calling their bank or whatever to find out, like Mark was saying, if this is a legitimate query that's being sent to them. Don't just start clicking on links, because often you can get spyware on your computer or other things as well by clicking on these links. So I've had to clean my mother-in-law's computer more than once from viruses and other spyware they've gotten on her computer from these spam emails that she's getting. So
when you go over, Peter, does she have like 8 different search bars like underneath on her navigation screen? My grandfather always has.
How did you know?
Yeah. So let's get back on topic here. With so many scams out there, and we hear about them. Obviously, we've heard about phishing and how emails can get out there. Why do you think they work so well still? Like, what is it that grabs people and makes them think like, oh, okay, this is what I should do? Because look, we're not all dumb. We're not all stupid. People get stuck in these things. So what is that sucking them in, and that they can't figure out that it's a scam?
I think it's probably fear. You get this thing and you just freak out, and your fear is turned on, and you're like, oh my gosh, something's going to go wrong, and I have to fix this. You're thinking, I have to fix this, and I have to fix this now.
Yeah, exactly. Now I think it's exhaustion and lack of education in addition to the fear, and they probably all contribute to each other, right? You come home, at the end of the day, you've got a lot of worries, whether it's your personal life, your work life. You don't want to worry about money. You don't really have the education around money. You don't really know. You just sort of something that you've pushed to the side, and you panic. And all they need, it's a numbers game, like Mark was saying. Even if they can just get 2 or 3 out of 1,000, that's worth their time.
And it's such a low barrier to entry. I mean, what does it take to email people? It's not. They probably hit hundreds of thousands of people in one batch. Who knows? But it's probably relatively easy for them to go out there and, like you guys are saying, you get a couple of people who are willing to give up their financial details, and it pays off for them. So I want to ask, what actually constitutes a financial scam? A lot of people will say, oh, that company's a scam, I lost money. But really it was something maybe that they did themselves, or they fell for maybe some marketing, but it wasn't necessarily illegal, as opposed to something that's a scam where they're really trying to steal something from you. What's the difference there? Or did I maybe just answer right there?
Answer the question all in one sentence, yeah.
I mean, is it a scam if somebody gets you to buy insurance that you didn't really want? Or is it only a scam if it's, they make you sign something that's illegal? Like, what do you think constitutes a scam?
Oh, man, that's a fine line, because part of me wants to be like, yeah, if they're taking advantage of you in any way, then it feels like a scam.
Yeah, like where's the line, that the caveat emptor? How much of it is my fault, or how much of it is the other person's fault?
I don't know. I think that when there's something, personally, I think that something is deliberately obscure. If they're deliberately trying to trick you into doing something, or deliberately trying to get you to do something that you wouldn't normally do, I think that, I don't know. That's a hard line
for
to
me,
draw.
There's like different degrees of scam. For example, like I've been noted on my sort of passion and feelings towards the Canadian mutual fund industry specifically. That's like a moderate level of scam, I think, given the fees that are taken. But obviously that's on a whole nother level from the phishing scam, where they're outwardly doing something very illegal. Even some people would argue that sort of modern-day credit card statements before all these regulations came in were somewhat of a scam with the sort of dishonesty. If they truly wanted to educate you, they wouldn't put in fine print, right? So I think there's various levels of scam depending on sort of what sort of definition you're looking for.
Yeah, I think even like a bait and switch is, it's
Sure.
you need to be financially savvy, but if somebody says here's a product that you could buy if you come to our store and then it's not there, that's pretty scammy.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Kyle was saying is right. There's different levels of scams and different degrees. Here in Minnesota, we had the Tom Petter's scam. It was like kind of a Ponzi scheme and so forth, but it was billions of dollars. Then there's smaller scams that are being run every day. People preying on people in their church or what have you. But a lot of them have similar things going on with, they're coming to you with some sort of crazy offer that promises spectacular profits and guaranteed returns, or maybe they're short on details, but they're relying on your trust in them, their personality, and this guy's a nice guy, so what he's telling me must be true. And they're also thinking they're trying to push you into making a decision quickly without actually doing any research. This is a one-time offer. It's going quick. I came to you because I consider you a friend, and I wanted you to get in on the ground floor.
I consider you a sucker.
They don't quite say it that way. Not until you've signed it. Everything that you're saying there, it screams to me Bernie Madoff.
Yeah.
And here was somebody who people trusted. They really thought it was like legitimate, and for years, maybe decades, I forget how long it went. It was legitimate.
It was like 20, 30 years. It was ridiculous.
To this day, the Mets are only now starting to come out of that funk of being stuck in Bernie Madoff, but that's a whole other subject.
Nice.
I just got to play that in there. But again, it was that concept of like, this is too good to be true. Like, I need to get in on this now so that I can make a killing.
And one of the things, too, that's interesting about the Bernie Madoff thing, and that also speaks to these kinds of scams, is it was kind of an exclusive thing, like only for the elite. You had to know somebody who could introduce you to Bernie Madoff or his company or whatever.
Like, it was a privilege to be a part of
it was a privilege, right. Not just anybody could do it. And so there are some scams out there that are kind of similar that, and it kind of goes back to your thing. Oh, well, I know that you are so super fantastic that you would recognize this awesome opportunity. You're one of the elite. And you want to feel like you're special and you're part of that inner circle.
Yeah. And that's the thing, too. We're not talking about, somebody who necessarily doesn't, they're not good with their money in general. Like, he was able to dupe people who were financial advisors, people who were in charge of money, people who really, in general, should know better, that you would trust with your money, and that's really what blew the whole thing up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a scam to me is like misrepresentation, omitting material facts, intent, like what Miranda mentioned, but intent to deceive and to like take advantage, exploit, those kinds of things where someone may not be financially sophisticated or not have all the correct information to make a proper decision for their situation. The Bernie Madoff thing was just creating that demand, like, you have to be exclusive to be working with him, and his ties with NASDAQ and SEC and all that stuff, it just made him look like he was so legitimate because with the people and the names that he was associated with, you think, okay, there's no way this guy would be part of a scam or Ponzi scheme, but unfortunately, it came to the truth that it was, and it took a financial meltdown of what happened in 2008 to uncover this, and many more other smaller known scams came out of what occurred, because everyone was asking for the money, people were pulling out, and there was no money to cover the funds that were being withdrawn. So, it was just kind of like things unraveled, the house of cards, as you will, came crashing down, and it was all exposed after what occurred.
And even just not to dwell too much on this one particular one, I had read. I'm looking up at my bookshelf there. There's a book called No One Would Listen by not Mark, but his last name is Markopoulos. And he talks about the scam, though, how it was even reported like a decade beforehand that things were fishy, and nobody wanted to believe it. Nobody wanted to see that the emperor had no clothes because it was like, oh, but it can't be him. Let's not bother. It's crazy.
It goes back to people. It's the greed. Some people were seeing, oh, I'm getting all this money. It has to be real because I'm getting all this money back from him.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, he's taking money from the new investors or whatever and giving it to the older ones, and it just kind of feeds on itself until they couldn't do it anymore. But people have that. That's one thing you got to watch out for: the greed that, oh man, I could get these huge profits and have all this money and so forth. And that's something that a lot of these people are preying on, and they're counting on you to just see that number and just stop thinking, basically.
Money has a funny way of making you blind to the facts, doesn't it?
It's pretty much either end of the spectrum. It's either greed or fear. Like what you're either worried about losing your money or you're trying to make some easy money. But either way, they're kind of preying on that emotion of it. Yeah,
trying to do something fast to make the money grow. And I know we've talked about it on this show many times, but the best way to building wealth, or one of the best ways, is the slow and steady way of doing it. It may not be too exciting or sexy, but you do the right things and put your money away, and 30, 40 years you have a nice nest egg. But it seems like if somebody's telling you that you can do it in 5 years or less, maybe then you really have to start asking you how that's really happening.
When researching for the show, and maybe Mark, I don't know if you have some experience with this, do you notice any difference in gender in terms of opportunity to be scammed? Because I would think that men, given our well-publicized egos and our sort of want to swing for the fences, I would be willing to bet that we get scammed more often and more successfully than women do on average. Does anyone know that for sure? Or?
I don't know the empirical data on that, but yeah, I think it's in this industry we're looking for big gains, right, really quick, and I think doing a financial planning and looking at the big picture. If you've got people that have time on their sides, you don't need to have like a 20-30% gain each year. You're just looking for relatively consistent growth, annual compounding that will grow over time. But yeah, typically you hear these far-fetched like marketing. Buy this stock, you can go up like 30-40%. Those things typically don't pan out the way they're marketed, and that's where people get sucked into trying it out. And I don't know how long you guys been investing, but like in the 90s there were boiler rooms. I don't think they're around anymore, but you get calls. I get someone from New York call me like really pushing for this particular penny stock and never heard of it before, and it's more regulated now because of the caller list and all that stuff. Do not call, but it was insane. People were really pressured into buying this stuff. You'd never met the person, but you'd send them thousands of dollars to buy you this stock you've never heard of, and people would do it, believe it or not. But yeah, I think mostly probably the men would probably fall for this in most cases, but I don't have any empirical evidence to say they do. But for most cases, I think most males are probably into trading or short-term gains and stuff, from my perception.
I just found a stat from the FTC. It says the typical victim is male 55 to 61, so there's probably a little bit of a retirement fear there too in the age.
Yeah,
it could also be their demographic in that by that age maybe you have some money put away that you could afford to put into a scam like that and make it pay off for somebody.
Well, seniors are huge targets of scams. Just as far as age goes, I mean, seniors are huge targets because, like you said, they generally have the bigger nest egg, and they're targets for all sorts of scams, from tax scams, Medicare scams, scams about annuity-related scams, all sorts of scams. Just because they do have, they're more likely to have that nest egg and all that kind of stuff.
Now, going back to that boiler room situation, what I'm trying to get to here is it wasn't always penny stocks though, was it? I mean, like if a small brokerage bought a certain amount of whatever stock and they needed to dump it, I mean, the directive would be, all right, guys, you need to sell such and such today, right? And they would push it on to whomever, And maybe it would be a scam, maybe it wasn't, but really their incentive was to just get rid of the stock. And I think that's not that every stockbroker is a scam artist or every brokerage, but there are certainly misaligned incentives and checks and balances there to certainly keep people off their balance and possibly buy things they don't really want or need. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, there's some, when you've got a company that's making a market in a stock and they're holding the inventory, not necessarily it's all penny stocks. I've experienced penny stocks, so I'm just sharing my personal experience, but yeah, it could be a smaller company that people don't know, or not necessarily penny stocks, but yes, if they have a vested interest in dumping these shares, they would use their sales force and try to sell it off to their clients or to someone they don't know and just basically get rid of it. So yeah, that's another alternative to that.
And like in a case like that, that's what I'm saying, where you might lose money, but it's not necessarily illegal either. It really kind of floats that line there. They're saying, hey, you know what, you need to do it now. You need to buy this now. We need to get rid of it, or they're not going to tell you to get rid of it, but it's going to make a killing, whatever. It went up 4 cents yesterday, so if you buy this much of it, you're really going to do well. But there's nothing to hold them to that necessarily.
Right.
So it really just still comes down to each person, having the fortitude to say, wait a second, if this is good today, it'll be good tomorrow, or maybe it'll be good from a week from now or a year from now. And I think that's a hard thing.
When I teach about fraud and stuff in some of my finance classes at school, I have a sanitized, clean version of the Wolf of Wall Street clip, that 5-minute clip with Matthew McConaughey, and they're talking about how no one knows if the market will go up or down, but it's all fairy dust and blah blah blah. And for some reason, that just hits home, where they're like, "Is this real?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not all real, but like the general sort of, especially like Mark was saying 20 years ago, yeah, the sentiment is absolutely real. That they can convince you it's going up, down. It really doesn't matter to them one way or the other. They make money if you sell or buy in a lot of cases. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot more information out there, and brokerages, they've felt that too, because we can go online and just buy on our own. But I'm sure that there's still people out there trying to get one-on-one with people to get them to buy and sell. So people really need to be aware of that.
I think it goes back to the idea of not investing in something you don't understand or that you haven't done a little bit of research on. Don't rely on somebody else's goodwill or whatever to put your good hard-earned money into it. Make sure you're understanding what you're investing in, and if you don't understand it, do your due diligence beforehand. It's easier than ever these days to go online and do research on a company, on an investment, on a charity, whatever the case may be. Just go online, do a Google search. There are sites that specialize in scams themselves, like scam.com. Go on there. Ask other people, if they've dealt with this company or with a certain whatever investment, and often you're going to get a ton of answers. So.
Yeah, that's what always gets me, Peter. Like when I buy a new toaster, I go on Google and Google performance reviews for a toaster, right? But yet you're going to invest thousands of dollars on one guy's tip. It seems insane to me that you don't at least Google the company's resume or whatever the case may be.
Well, what's the statistics of the story? We spend more time shopping for a car or planning out our vacation than we do planning our finances, right? People just don't want to have to do that, or they think that the numbers that are there are just sort of beyond them, when really they're not. You want to try to at least get into something that you sort of understand well, and if you don't understand it, like you guys say, don't bother with it right then and there. So here's one scam. I don't know if it would have led into a financial scam or not, but I've gotten this phone call, a few times already, and somebody calls, and they say that my computer needs an upgrade, a Windows upgrade, and they need me to log in so that they could upgrade it. Through their system, they were able to see that something was going on, so they need me to do that right now, and they could fix it for me. Now, I mean, I'm tech savvy enough to know that, look, nobody's going to call me, and nobody should have my information even. to do that. But what really gets me about this particular one is, I have an Apple computer, I have a Mac, so I'm not running Windows. But
An interesting thing with that scam actually is that they're using the Skype too. So the number that comes in is local, even though it's very much not local. So
and it sounds like the people there they don't sound local.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. I like to play with the guy and like let him talk to me for a while. I ask him like, "Oh, how'd you find it? Oh, really? What's wrong with the computer?" Blah blah blah. And then I'll say, "But how do I get from Windows to my Apple computer?" And then he gets like really confused, and sometimes they get angry and hang up. Or I figure that if I'm spending time on the phone with him, that means he's not talking to somebody else that might get sucked into it. But I could easily tell. I could see how somebody who might not be as tech savvy can get that call and go, "Oh, really? What's wrong with it?" And I could see somebody going to their computer and logging on and doing that, and that's the unfortunate thing. And it's pretty crazy. It's not an email where you're going to check the URLs or anything like that. It's a phone call here and now, and that's unfortunate. I'd hate to see how many people that actually works on. If they're sending it to me 3 times, who else is out there being caught in that net? It's pretty nuts. What are some other scams that are out there? I think we touched on a few. I've heard a lot about this called an affinity scam. Mark, could you talk to that or anybody else?
Yeah, so basically, the affinity scam is where someone would target a particular group. Could be like a religious group or ethnicity. There's a website, sec.gov, that talks about it, like what defines an affinity scam, and some recent affinity scams that were, I guess, exposed. So what they'll do is they'll try to, be associated or portray that they're part of this group. They'll reach out to the center of influence, and based on whatever they're trying to extract, whether it's funds or membership or whatever product they're trying to get or personal information, they would focus on those groups. So it's like targeting, groups, subgroups of, specific, commonalities, and try to infiltrate that group as they're part of that, and they'd like to, whether financial gain or financial information, that's what they're looking to do. So there's different kinds of affinity scams or frauds that are targeted out there.
So, like, what kind of targeted groups are we talking about? Like, maybe like people who are alumni from one school, or like what are we talking about?
Just to give you an example, there was one here for targeting fellow military, investment scheme for Lebanese and Druze communities. This is on the SEC website as well, sec.gov. Look at affinity. There's also one for targeting Christian investors, Persian Jewish community in Los Angeles, real estate developer, Miami affinity fraud, Hispanic community. So there's a bunch. So basically targeting groups, whether it's ethnic or commonalities, military, could be occupation, could be hobbies, it could just be your religious faith. So I didn't read into detail, but it looks like it's more like Ponzi and looking for funding, and you'll get a return, and really it's all based on investors putting new money in to cover the old investors, that type of thing, but focusing on groups.
It sounds like it niches down to maybe prey on somebody's expertise of a group, perhaps.
Well, I think one of the scariest things about a lot of affinity scams is that it brings in people that don't realize they're being duped to bring in more people. So, like, you'd have somebody who would just, all they have to do is convince one person in that community that they're a really great person and that they've got this really great opportunity for them, and then show, manufacture some results for this one person in the community, and then everybody else who trusts that person will think that it's totally legit, and that guy may not even know he's totally helping scam all of his buddies. And so I think that's one of the really insidious things about affinity scams, particularly, is that a lot of the time these kind of masterminds, get somebody who's in the group and get them to do it, and they don't even realize they're dupes and they're helping scam their friends.
That is pretty crazy. Or like an offshoot of some group where they are legitimate is what you're saying, but then this part of it, for these people, it's not. Interesting. So what are some other scams that we need to be on the lookout for that might be pretty common?
But charity scams. People calling you up trying to get you to give to a charity. Charity may or may not be real, or it's possible that charity is a real charity, but they're not giving very much money to the actual cause that they're talking about.
Oh man, I get so many calls like around dinner time. I'm calling from such and such. Would you be able to give $20 if we sent an envelope? Or, we're sending this around. Or and I'm sure a lot of them are legit. But with so many of those calls, you start to feel like either you don't want to deal with any of them, or you can imagine that for all the legitimate ones, to have one that's not legitimate float by is probably easy.
And that's hard because it's like, what are you going to say? No, I don't want to help cure childhood cancer. I mean,
Right. They're preying on emotions there too. Like you saw, even for the ones that are legitimate, like clothing drives and things like that. I feel bad when I'm like, look, I'm sorry, I just don't have time now. And I'm like, I just feel like I've just like hurt some poor little kid somewhere. But the truth is, I just don't have time, and I'm not going to put together a truckload of clothes for them. But when I do, I'll do it. So yeah, I could see how that plays on people pretty easily.
Well, and then if they're smart, they'll use like the new nudge or sway techniques to steal a couple book titles, and they'll say, yeah, 40% of your neighbors or 80% of your people that live on your street donated to this, and then they tap into all this other herd mentality, guilt, all this other stuff too. So just be cognizant of that, I guess, and maybe you'll be in a bit better position.
Yeah, that's a big sales technique. I don't want to say it's all a scam, but that's certainly a technique where I've gotten those from, like, we're in the neighborhood next week. We're going to be here on Tuesday. If you sign up now, we can get you a great deal because the truck's already here and it'll be easy. And it preys on you because, especially if it's something that you maybe even are looking for, you're like, oh, I've got to do it now. They're here. I'm going to get a discount. And it's like, no, you really don't have to. But it plays on you.
That's the thing. Again, they're preying on you. You got to do it now. You got a time-sensitive offer or whatever. Oh, I'm here now. You got to give now. That's one of those red flags for me. Is if they're trying to get you to do something immediately, then there's something probably wrong. If you can't go to a website later on after you've done some research or whatever and give that way, then there's something amiss. You can go to a website like America's Worst Charities or Charity Navigator or other sites like that to actually figure out if these charities are legit. If you go to a place like America's Worst Charities, you can look at some of these companies that, like Cancer Fund of America, they raised almost $7 million, and $75 million of that did not go to the cause. Only 1% of the money raised went to direct aid. So, do some research and go to a website like that. That'll give you a better idea of what you're actually giving to.
And something like that, it almost sounds like it's maybe not even a scam per se. It's just that your money's not necessarily going where you want it to go as efficiently as you'd like it to.
Right.
I mean, I think that there probably are charities that are set up to be complete scams. They give us the money and then they disappear and they're gone. But what you're saying is maybe they eat up more administrative fees. You give them $1 and maybe 75 cents of it goes to admin fees and to pay people who are CEOs and do whatever else. And 25 cents of that actually goes to maybe whatever they're helping with.
I've got a great example of that. If you guys have Jason's Deli in your area, it's a chain at all? No?
No,
Okay.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, so it's called Jason's Deli. It's a chain, and it was a few years ago. They had buy bottled water for $2 for cancer, research or whatever. And I looked at the fine print. This is after I bought it. Of that $2, 10 cents goes to the cancer. So it's not very much of what you're, supposedly giving. You're donating for cancer, and only 10 cents out of the $2. So I think that's something you need to look at, of how much is the money really working for and the cause it's supposed to support. something to look into. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's not a scam per se in a legal sense, but you're kind of being duped. They're just using that as a way to get you to buy their water.
It's
Whereas
one of Kyle's different levels of scams.
Yeah, that was from this America's Worst Charity site. They say that watchdog groups say that no more than 35% of donations should go to fundraising costs. I mean, that's just kind of a rule of thumb. So if you see a company that's got much, much higher than that, it's maybe a flag that maybe I should be looking somewhere else to give.
And I think an important distinction to make also is a lot of big charities, they do have legitimate logistical and administrative costs. So it's okay that they have them, but like you said, you want to find that threshold where it's not going over that they're being efficient with the money that you're giving away.
Exactly.
Right.
Anything else out there that we maybe need to look for?
I think a big one are the IRS scams that go around. I actually received a phone call a few weeks ago. Finally, I felt so special because I've been hearing about and writing about these IRS scams for years, and I'd never received a phone call before, and I finally did. But yeah, they make a phone call and they say that they either say there's a problem with your refund or that you owe more money or something like that. And so you get this phone call and it's spoofed. A lot of the time they'll spoof your caller ID so that when you look at your caller ID, it looks like it might be the IRS. It looks like it might be legitimate, but it's not. It's just somebody trying to get your personal information because the IRS will not give you this, ask for this information or tell you that you have a problem. They'll send you like a real letter through the mail.
And I can't imagine like that's got to be a prime example of them playing on your fears and emotions. You know, you get a letter from the IRS. It's not like there's no positive reinforcement with the IRS. They don't send you letters or give you calls saying, you know what, I just want to let you know you've been spot on and you're so close, you know, between what you spend and we're just happy to deal with it. Like you get a call from them as something's going on. Or a letter, rather, not a call.
I was going to say
a letter.
They won't call. They won't call or email.
I don't want to make that confusing. But yeah, I can see it's all fear. You just say the words, the letters IRS, and people kind of like tense up just a little bit out of fear. So how do we protect ourselves from being scammed? I mean, I think we've talked a little bit. You know, if you get an email that's suspicious, there's ways to check it. You know, but what can we do in general to make sure that we're not taking that step where we get pulled into it?
Well, I think being educated is a big first step, which is why I'm always yelling from the tops of the trees whenever I write about this. Like specifically the IRS one. The IRS will not contact you except for official letter for these sorts of things. So if you get an email telling you, or you know, if you get an email, and one of the things they also do is, you know, play on your greed a little bit. They're like, you have a refund, or you have more than you thought you did. And so then you're like, yeah. And so I'll click on this link and you know, claim my refund faster or whatever. And then you've given away your information. So I think part of it is just, you know, making sure you understand the channels of communication.
And they were playing on that if it's too good to be true. I mean, who doesn't want a refund? That's awesome. Even if you try to do everything so that you minimize any refunds, if they say that you got one, who doesn't want one of those? What else can we do? I think I know like for just like shopping, right? I'm not saying shopping is a scam, but like if you want to buy something, they say, you know, give it 30 days, and if you feel like you really need to buy it, you know, then it's okay. But, you know, I'm thinking like if you could put a time component on a lot of these scams, you know, if you could give yourself some time to do some research, time to think about it, time to see if it makes sense, you could probably cushion yourself a great deal against these scams.
Yep.
Yeah, I think just taking your time. I mean, due diligence, don't rush to a decision to take action. You know, do a fact check, maybe talk to your friends and see if this is legit. Just being aware. I think what Miranda said makes sense. Just being aware that there's a lot out there and you just got to be careful. I mean, there are landmines out there. You just got to take your time and don't rush to do anything. If it's something new that you've never heard of, don't just do it. Consult with your friends, family, people that are in that industry, depending on what kind of scam it is. And just there's no time where you have to just do something right away, but not knowing what you're doing. So I think just step back, take your time, no rush, and just be aware that there are scams out there, and just gotta be careful. So.
And what about information? Like, what information should you never give somebody, legitimate or not? I mean, I hear things, people ask for stuff, and it makes me go, wait a second, what do you need this for?
Well, I know two things got to be careful is their social security number, obviously, even birth date, because there's information where they could find something else that could lead to your social. So birth date, social security number, home address.
And what's so dangerous about giving that information? I mean, certainly, I know I've heard, you guard that social security number, because they can do things with it. But what is it that they're doing with this information? What can somebody do if they have this?
Well, the big thing is identity theft. Accessing your account information. I just had a family friend a few weeks ago. She had her identity stolen. So it's a big mess. You gotta call your credit card companies, call your banks. It wasn't you. You gotta close those accounts down. It's time consuming. It's depending on how much damage is done. You gotta follow all the the steps that the person did to make sure that you're not accountable for whatever financial gain they were looking to take off you, whether it's taking money out of your account, creating a new credit card under your name, being charged for that, charging your information. So it can get really messy, and it's time consuming, and it costs money. That's why you've got firms like LifeLock, and you have Experian and TransUnion. They offer like credit monitor services for like, I don't know, $70 a year or something, where anytime there's something changed in your credit information, they'll contact you and say, okay, this is what occurred, and you just got to be careful, because once it's stolen, it's out there. I mean, it could be used over and over again, depending on, if it's on a website somewhere, it could be, used by another party, not just the original party that took it, but if they put it out in the public information, that's something where you're going to have to keep an eye on for basically the rest of your life.
And it's not something like a credit card number where you call them up and say, all right, I think this happened. Can you send me a new number? Like, you're not getting a new social security number because somebody stole it. It's really going to be up to you to make sure that you put out any fires that have been lit.
If you're going to... Yeah, go ahead. If you're going to apply for new credit, it's going to be hard. I mean, it's going to affect you financially. I mean, there's people that have had their financial information taken, and they can't do things that they normally would do, like take out a loan, credit card line increases, anything. I mean, anything that has anything to do with their financials or the credit, and even like opening an account, it's difficult. So it's something where it's really messy, and you don't want to get in that situation.
I'm really glad that you mentioned identity theft, because I think you don't always think of it as a scam, because it's something that kind of hits you after the fact. Like, you don't even necessarily have to be a willing partner in any way, shape, or form. They could steal your identity, and it's not even a case of you having given them your social security. You might just find out somebody was able to open up an account in your name, and you don't find out until you're trying to maybe, like you said, open up an account somewhere or try to get a loan somewhere, and then you find out that this thing has been kind of piggybacking your identity and harming you without you even knowing it. So that's certainly a scam that I think is very common these days, that we need to be very vigilant and aware of. You mentioned going to I forget the company you mentioned, but you mentioned Experian and all the
TransUnion,
Equifax bureaus. There's Credit Karma. There's a number of different companies that you could go to check it, and you could even have your annual credit report free, 3 times a year, one from each of them, to make sure that everything there looks legitimate. So again, it comes down to us, the consumer, keeping up with it.
And it's worth noting, too, that all of the major credit bureaus are now partnered with these consumer credit sites. So Equifax is partnered with Quizzle, and TransUnion is partnered with Credit Karma, and Credit Sesame is partnered with Experian. So you can actually go to these sites, and even though it's not like an official credit report or anything, they're free, and they kind of give you an overview of what you've got, that information that's in your credit report. So you can kind of keep tabs on it through these consumer credit sites for free.
It's enough that you could go on there and see, is there a legitimate...
Right, yeah, you can get a red flag. It's not exactly the same thing, but it can give you, like, just give you a way to sort of keep tabs on it a little bit.
That's good stuff. Let's talk one last thing here. Let's say you get pulled into a scam. You find out somehow you thought it was legitimate, and after the fact, no. What are the steps that you could take there? What do you do once you're in the scam? Maybe you've been scammed. Maybe it's ongoing. What do you do?
So it's, even though they can't do a lot about it, it's usually a good idea to report it to law enforcement, because especially if your accounts are compromised, a report to law enforcement can help so that you are liable for less.
That's a good point. And by reporting it, you're probably helping a lot of other people out too, making sure that it's out there so that maybe it can be stopped as well. I would imagine if you found that something was happening and it was attached to some accounts, go in there, be active, and change those accounts, move the money somewhere else, move the account somewhere else, close it out, open it up. If it's a credit card, make sure that they change the numbers. If it's a bank account, make sure they're aware of it so they could change access to it. I think with identity theft and such, you can have your credit frozen so that nobody can open anything in your name without your permission. So, but again, it all comes down to, it seems like if I'm not doing it, it's going to be a rare thing that somebody else is going to be doing it to protect me. So I think that brings us to a good way to sum everything out here. We certainly went through a lot of different scams here and how they happen and why they happen. And what we like to do is we sum up the show and we'll go around and give a final word. So, Tom, what's your final word on financial scams and how to avoid them?
Pretty much with research, just going online and searching. Like if you get an email or a phone call, if you search the words that are being used, you'll probably find someone that's already encountered this. So whether you're getting an email from Bernie Madoff or a Nigerian prince, you can pretty much find it online.
And Peter, what's your final word on financial scams and avoiding?
Along the same lines, whether it's a phishing scam, a charity scam, an affinity scam, whatever kind of scam it is, just take the time to do your research. Don't feel like you should be pressured into doing something right away. A lot of times it's a red flag if somebody's trying to push you into making a quick decision without doing your due diligence. So sit down, do some research, go online. There are plenty of websites that you can go out to look into these different investment companies, the different charities, whatever the case may be. And then also just do your due diligence on the other end too for the ID theft. Use one of the free services like Credit Sesame, where they have the free credit monitoring, where they'll alert you if there's any new accounts opened or anything like that. And then just check your credit reports several times a year, and you'll be good to go.
Miranda, what are your thoughts on avoiding financial scams? Your final words.
Yeah, just educate yourself, and kind of what we were talking about before, what Mark was mentioning, take a step back and take your time. You don't have to click on something the moment you open it. You don't have to make a decision immediately. You have a few minutes to step back and look at it and calm down and say, wait a minute, this may be my gut reaction that I have to fix this, but is it really something you have to fix? So take a step back.
Kyle, what's your final word on avoiding financial scams?
Maybe just following up a little bit on your last point there, Glenn. If you do happen to get scammed, do everyone else a favor and talk about it a little bit. There was a great documentary ESPN did called Broke, and they specifically looked at, a large part of it was looking at how athletes got scammed and how there were all these, these guys, these big testosterone-fueled men that they never wanted to admit it, or admit that they got. And it really, a lot of their friends were being pulled into the same stuff. So do everyone a favor and help them educate themselves if you do happen to run into a scam artist.
And Mark, if you'll close out our final word and give us your final word on avoiding financial scams.
Yeah, I think a lot of it just culminates what everyone else said. Take your time, be aware. There's no rush to making a decision or doing something that you're not comfortable with. And not doing anything isn't going to hurt you, so there's nothing wrong with just stepping back and taking a look and seeing what you're getting yourself possibly into. So just step back and think before you act is basically what I would say.
Good stuff. Mark, for our listeners out there that may not be familiar with your company, tell us a little bit about it and a little bit about yourself as well.
Sure. So my name is Mark Tan. I'm an advisor with Thrivent Financial, which is a nonprofit Christian organization. Our actually headquarters in Minneapolis, and we do a lot of giving back to the community with our charitable work and volunteerism and donations. So we have a pretty big partner with Habitat for Humanity. We do work a lot with churches. Thrivent is a Lutheran organization, and it's opened up to membership to Christians just the last few years. So we do a lot of things where we're working with the community and doing financial planning and living generously, teaching people to be wise with their money and live generously. And that's our core reason why we work with people and try to help people out with their situation.
Good stuff, Mark. Thank you again for joining us and helping to educate our listeners on avoiding financial scams. Really appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And for everybody else out there, until next week, be good with your money. Good night.
Thanks for joining us on the Money Mastermind Show. Get more information at moneymastermindshow.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Google+.